Hi, I'm Eric Bowling in for Bill O'Reilly. Thanks for watching this special edition of the O'Reilly Factor Election 2016. Let's get straight to our top story. Another round of name-calling and accusations of bigotry between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. Last night, Trump doubled down on comments he made earlier this week, calling Hillary Clinton a bigot.
She is a bigot because you look at what's happening to the inner cities. You look at what's happening to African Americans and Hispanics in this country, where she talks all the time. She's selling them down the tubes because she's not doing anything for those communities. She talks a good game,
so
but she doesn't do anything.
She has hatred or
her policies are bigoted. Policies are bigoted because she knows they're not going to work.
You're saying she is personally bigoted?
Oh, she is. Of course she is. Her policies, they're her policies. She comes out with the policies, and others that believe like she does also. But she came out with policies over the years. This is over the years, long time. She's totally bigoted.
Meantime, Hillary Clinton leveled a scathing attack of her own, saying Trump's campaign is built on prejudice and paranoia.
In just this past week, under the guise of outreach to African Americans, Trump has stood up in front of largely white audiences and described black communities in such insulting and ignorant terms: poverty, rejection, horrible education, no housing, no homes, no ownership, crime at levels nobody has seen. Right now, he said, you can walk down the street and get shot. Those are his words. But when I hear them, I think to myself, how sad. Donald Trump misses so much.
Joining us now from Houston, Horace Cooper, a senior fellow at the Conservative Heartland Institute, and from Los Angeles, Leo Terrell, an attorney and liberal activist. Leo, let's start with you. In that soundbite we played with Anderson Cooper, Trump mentioned her policies 6 separate times. So are you saying, is Hillary Clinton, are the left saying that Donald Trump is calling Hillary a bigot or her policies a bigot? Bigoted.
Eric, Donald Trump doesn't know the definition of the term bigot. There is no way in the world you cannot get any of the mainstream Republicans. You don't hear any Republicans on Capitol Hill supporting Donald Trump's definition of the term bigoted as it applies to Hillary Clinton. It doesn't make sense. It's inapplicable. He's absolutely without any fact base. Now, on the other hand, that Hillary Clinton speech, Eric, was fact-based. Donald Trump attack of a federal judge, his attack against Muslims, his discrimination lawsuit that blacks have filed against him for housing discrimination. There is a factual blueprint of discrimination of Donald Trump against other groups. And let me be very clear to Mr. Trump. I have a house. I have a good job.
You know what, Leo, you do.
So
but let me just throw some statistics. Under President Obama, and he's a Democrat, Hillary's a Democrat, black household income under Obama down. Black home ownership down. Black poverty at a staggering 26.2%. That's the highest it's been in decades. Under President Obama, that means 1 in 4 African Americans in America are living in poverty. That's a Democrat policy. That could be seen
Eric, he
bigoted.
broad stroke every African American in his speech. African Americans do not worry about being shot when they go home. African Americans have jobs. He broad stroked every single African American. It was disingenuous.
All right, what am I missing here? Am I wrong in anything I've said here?
First of all, the very clip you showed, Hillary went through a litany of lies. It is true that black Americans are underhoused and they have been on a decline for 10 years. It is true that there's an elevated crime wave that we're experiencing, and it's primarily blacks who are suffering as a result. Wages are down. Opportunities for school are down. Absolutely. And it is good that finally someone is standing up and telling the truth. Romney didn't do it. McCain didn't do it. Somebody needed to stand up and explain that the policies that the left and the progressives have been pushing are bigoted
Mr. Cooper, you should be ashamed of yourself. Why don't you answer Eric's question?
For telling the truth?
Is Hillary Clinton a bigot? Is Hillary Clinton a bigot? Answer that question, please.
Leo, well, hold on,
Hillary Clinton a bigot?
Gentlemen, please. I posed the question, and I pointed out to you, Leo, that in that soundbite, Trump says her policies. He didn't say she's a bigot. He did once, but he said 6 separate times her policies can be deemed bigoted.
Respectfully,
Okay,
Eric, Anderson Cooper is asking him personally. Are you referring to her personally? He said yes.
And then he went on to explain right after that 6 separate times saying it's her policies.
Eric, don't you find it odd? Don't you find it odd that Paul Ryan, Mitch McConnell, no one has attacked Hillary's speech of yesterday? You know why? Because they agree with her.
Right, let's stay on Trump for a second.
Hillary
Guys, please, Horace, answer me this. School choice. Donald Trump is in favor of school choice. Hillary Clinton's in favor of protecting the teachers union, keeping things as they are. Which would be better for the African American community?
School choice is the #1 civil rights movement for blacks in the 21st century. Now, Hillary was an elected official. She was a senator. What bill has she ever introduced that has had any kind of positive impact for blacks? She can talk in a folksy drawl. She can sing a little folk songs every now and then when she talks to black people. Her policies have never. Her husband was a Fulbright scholar, and he said that when he was a governor, he was looking at Fulbright as one of his mentors.
Excellent.
A man who filibustered
have
the civil
nothing
rights
to do with this topic. This topic is about whether or not Hillary laid out a factual blueprint of Donald Trump racism. And what about Mr. Cooper? What about the alt-right group? This extreme right-wing group that has been incorporated
in Breitbart. Are you referring to the KKK endorsement of Hillary Clinton and the nearly $20,000 that she has not given back from KKK members? This is the record of this individual.
So you're not going to acknowledge anything of Trump's misgiving. Donald Trump claimed on national TV he didn't know who David Duke is. You really believe that, sir? You really believe that? And you still have not answered the question
I'm looking
as to whether
at
or not
Hillary
you believe.
Clinton's record. She was a senator from New York, and yet we now see the poverty that blacks are experiencing in New York City, and she did nothing.
Let me throw one more out here, guys. I don't have a lot of time, but let me throw one more out here. Let's talk about crime and law enforcement. Now, Donald Trump has said he's the candidate in favor of, he's the law enforcement candidate, in fact, he says. Who's most likely to be victims of crime in the inner cities? I'll start with you, Leo. Is it African Americans or whites?
I'll tell you exactly what it is. I'll tell you, it depends on the city. It depends on community-based police. I live in the city of Los Angeles, Eric, and I don't worry about being shot, as Donald Trump said. I live in Los Angeles all my life. I don't worry about being shot at all.
Okay, Horace?
Okay. All right. See, this is part of the reason why we don't get the truth told. The Center for Disease Control lists homicide as the #2 cause of death for black men. It has been an elevated season of criminality, and the victims have been overwhelmingly black in our inner cities, and Hillary has no solution. None whatsoever.
As an African-American, Mr. Cooper, you should be ashamed of yourself. Mr. Cooper, you should be ashamed of yourself
for not being willing to tell the truth.
Because of the fact of what is happening with Donald Trump's comments.
Thank you, guys. Very heated debate. Thank you very much, Leo Horace. Coming up, gotta go. Donald Trump making what appears to be another pivot on illegal immigration. Where does the Republican nominee really stand? We'll get answers from the Trump campaign next. In the Impact segment tonight, where does Donald Trump stand on illegal immigration? Trump has spent this week indicating he may back away from calls to deport all illegal immigrants in the U.S. And just moments ago, Trump talked more about his evolving immigration plan during an interview with Kimberly Guilfoyle.
We have to remember that we have a country that's based on laws, and the people are here illegally. So we will see what we will see. But we're going to start off by securing the border, by getting rid of a horrible criminal element that's causing tremendous havoc, drug dealers, gang members, etc. And I think people will be extremely happy. And I'll be announcing something within the next 2 weeks, a very comprehensive plan on immigration.
Trump also insisted there would be no pathway to citizenship for illegal immigrants unless they leave and come back. But just a day earlier, he suggested his administration could work with them. So what is Trump's stance? Joining us now with reaction from Miami, A.J. Delgado, a Trump campaign surrogate, and from Washington, Democrat strategist Richard Goodstein. A.J., good to have you on the show. Let's talk to us about this. You've been watching this. You're a surrogate. Are you satisfied with the plan? By the way, what is the plan?
I'm 100% satisfied, and I'm confused that there is any confusion about what the plan is or any of this talk of a pivot. There absolutely isn't any pivot. Mr. Trump is being completely consistent in what he has said for the past year, which is, number one, we build that wall and we enforce the border. We deport the illegal immigrants who are criminals, and there are a lot of bad guys that have to go first, as it should be. And we make sure that people leave and come back in the right way and register in their home countries and do it the lawful, legal way. This is what he's been saying the entire year. So there has absolutely not been a pivot. Where you do see a flip-flop on immigration, though, is with Hillary Clinton, who a few years ago was saying she was adamantly opposed to illegal immigrants, that she was in favor of a wall. She said that in 2006. And even 2 years ago, she said, listen, just because your child makes it across the border doesn't mean he or she gets to stay. That was only 2 years ago. And now she's completely pro-illegal immigration. Maybe Richard can explain that.
I'll leave it to Richard. Richard, are you satisfied with Donald Trump basically saying, look, I'm going to review this. I'm a businessman. I'm going to make a deal here, review it, and come out with a plan in the next 2 weeks? That's solid, Richard.
You know, they didn't teach him at Fordham. There's two problems. One is videotape and one is people's memories. Forget what he said over the past year. Within the past 3 days, Wednesday, he said the terrific ones, his term, could stay. Yesterday, he said everybody has to leave. And today, he told Kimberly, we'll see what we'll see. So please, and in 2 weeks, really, this is something, excuse me, this is something that has been his calling card. He's had 5 calling cards. This is one, banning Muslims. He's a businessman. He's not a politician, right? And that somehow or other he was a self-funder. This week alone, we now see that he is a politician. That's what he's trying to be. So you have Sarah Palin and Ann Coulter going ballistic for good reason, because he seems to be backtracking on the single bedrock principle of his campaign. And yet, in some odd way, he's not really changing at all. So
all right.
I think he's going to lose both sides.
AJ, as Richard points out, has he flip-flopped 3 times in a week? I'm trying to figure it out myself.
Richard, you can't make up quotes. You can't just make up a quote. When did he say, quote, the terrific ones could stay? I believe you're referring to the quote he said where those who have been here
Wednesday of this week.
15 to 20. Oh, I know exactly what quote you're telling. Let me explain to you the quote. He said, those who have been here 15 to 20 years,
you've heard of him.
We will
Richard, let her explain.
with them. We will work with them, he said. How is that exactly saying he would stay? You can't make up a quote.
And can I just throw this in here? One of the other things that he's been rigid on, clearly the wall, he's still rigid on that. And and he's been very, very specific. Listen, a no pathway to citizenship, which I think a lot of the base is really mostly concerned with.
Listen,
absolutely.
Eric, are we supposed to take seriously even this whole notion of the Mexicans playing for the wall? It's kind of like keeping out all Muslims. He's put it out there, but nobody has really cross-examined him. Can we not agree that this is a silly notion? And the fact that we're even talking about it as if it's a legitimate proposal is kind of nonsense, right?
Well, actually, no. I'm not going to agree with that whatsoever. I've actually proposed a plan for any GOPer who wanted to build a wall and have Mexico pay for it. It's not that hard. It's not that hard. AJ, your thoughts?
There's no parallel to that. None.
It's very easily done through remittances, through taxing the money that they send through Western Union, whatever it may be. You tax that effectively. That is Mexico. That is Mexicans who are here paying for the wall.
That's against the Fifth Amendment. That's seizing private property. Sorry, AJ. I thought the right wing didn't like people
taxes on cigarettes is seizing private property? Gee.
Remittances
is money. And I didn't know that.
No, remittances is money being sent from people in the U.S. to their family in Mexico, right? That's their property that they earn.
Richard, right. You know that.
Let's take this other issue that Trump campaign manager Kellyanne Conway has said. AJ, talk to me about this. Is there an underreported following for Donald Trump? In other words, people who are polled say they won't say they'll vote for Trump, but in actuality they are pulling for Trump, especially in the Latino community.
1,000% resounding yes. In fact, I have, as Kellyanne said, people who come to me privately from all sorts of friends, family, colleagues, who say, hey, I love what you said about Trump. And I'm like, why are you whispering? And it's because there's this stigma, this media, this witch hunt against those who go against Hillary, or dare I say, even support Trump in any outward fashion. So people privately support him, and they will at the ballot box in secret.
There was some suggestion of that during the primaries as well. And the fact of the matter is, Donald Trump outperformed his poll numbers. So there was a kind of this illusion
Wrong.
out there
Check
that
the
somehow,
New York GOP primary.
AJ, I'm sorry.
All right,
Now,
I gotta
I'm looking
go.
across the
I gotta
country.
go.
Sorry.
A lot
Richard,
of
you're
heat,
lying.
a
The
lot of heat
Latino
on this
vote in the New
Friday
York
night, you
GOP
guys.
primary.
You gotta
AJ,
go,
that's
AJ
pathetic.
Richard. Thank you very
Bye.
much. Next on the rundown, Hillary Clinton making a bold claim about her email and Clinton Foundation controversies, but it could come back to haunt her. We'll explain right after this. In the Unresolved Problems segment tonight, new questions around Hillary Clinton's email and Clinton Foundation controversies. The Democratic nominee getting a grilling during an interview earlier today about whether more bombshells will drop.
Are you certain that there are no emails or foundation ties to foreign entities that will be revealed that could perhaps permanently impact your presidential prospects?
Mika, I am sure. My work as Secretary of State was not influenced by any outside forces. I made policy decisions based on what I thought was right to keep Americans safe and protect our interests abroad. I believe my aides also acted appropriately.
Joining us now with reaction from Palm Springs, California, Rick Grinnell, former U.S. spokesman at the UN and a Fox News contributor. And here in studio, Jessica Tarlov, a Democratic strategist and pollster. Now, Hillary Clinton sounded very sure, Jessica, that these things weren't going to affect her candidacy, weren't going to affect anything. However, now we find there's 15,000 new emails that the FBI wants her to produce. And then this other thing, this bleach bit. She
didn't decide to do that. I mean, she's
software that Trey Gowdy's characterizes that it wiped it so clean, even God couldn't read them.
Yes, Trey Gowdy's often good with his words, and Hillary Clinton did not make that decision herself. Her tech staff did, but I'm not saying that it looks great. It obviously looks like they went to great lengths to delete them, but to pin that on her, I don't think is appropriate. And the emails are coming out. Brian Fallon, her spokesman, has said that they want all of the emails out there to show that there was no pay for play. And we'll see what comes out. It's going to be out before the election.
Rick, I would think that if my honest and trustworthy numbers were in the tank, like something like the negatives being like 70% or somewhere around there, I wouldn't want these things to keep coming out. There's more and more. Every week there's another email or Clinton Foundation mini scandal going on.
Yeah, look, the emails have already proved that there is pay for play. Jessica is wrong on that. We have lots of evidence. You have to look at Boko Haram, you have to look at Bahrain, you have to look at uranium from Russia. There is already a plethora of information that shows pay for play. The fact that the State Department now has been taken over by partisans, it's a really sad day. I spent 8 years there. I know many good Foreign Service officers who are horrified to see the politics that are being played. The fact that this State Department is delaying justice, delaying transparency till after the election. Let me tell you one thing. If this happened in a foreign country, we would be calling for the more transparency. We would be saying the elections are rigged, and we would be condemning this action if it happened anywhere else other than America.
And now, Jessica, what Rick is pointing out is that the State Department said that Clinton's full schedule won't be released until after the election day. Now, a federal judge has already said, let's get that schedule out
Absolutely,
there.
and that's the State Department's decision, not Hillary Clinton's. Half of her schedule is already out there.
It's everyone else's fault, Jess. It's like
Isn't that
not
amazing?
It's her tech people's fault.
And also, while we're
it's
at
her
it,
State
Rick,
Department.
Jessica is not wrong. It is in pay for play. Peter Schweitzer and Tom Fitton, who have been leading the charge here, have both admitted that there is no smoking gun here. As Hillary Clinton said, there's a lot of smoke, but there's no fire. I'm not saying that it looks good, and we discussed this before. I think that what the Washington Post and USA Today talked about in terms of turning the foundation over to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation at this point would not be a bad idea. But I'm just saying you don't have the evidence that there was pay for play.
Can I make one quick point here? This is the classic Clinton triangulation.
What I'm
Hillary
doing?
Hillary Clinton held her schedule the entire time. She was not on the State Department server. To now say the State Department is the one that should release her calendars, they never had her calendars. They were on a private server. She is the one who can release these. She is the one who's responsible. If she won't release these, she cannot blame anyone else other than Hillary Clinton. She didn't even have a state.gov email address.
You know what's
Stop
scary?
this phoniness.
You know what's scary? And Rick and Jessica weigh in on this, but she shredded with this bleach bit. 30,000 emails. We'll probably never know what's in those emails. But then she didn't tell the FBI about 15,000 additional emails.
She told us she had one phone.
Yeah,
we found out she didn't because we saw pictures.
Let me bring Jessica in here. The FBI had discovered 15,000 emails they didn't previously know about. Is there any transparency to this woman at all?
Well, eventually we get there, right? I mean, no, the phone thing. Anyway, no, I've talked about this before. James Comey was very clear that there were issues, not with her testimony to the FBI, but clearly pointed out that Hillary Clinton had told differing stories. As Rick says, there were multiple devices here. And I was happy to see with Anderson Cooper in her interview yesterday that she finally went to what I'm calling the appropriate apology doctor. And she said, every time I try to explain the emails, it looks like I'm trying to cover something up, so I'm not going to anymore. It was a tremendous mistake. But that doesn't mean that, first and foremost, that the Clinton Foundation hasn't done tremendous good for the world, delivering drugs to what?
Well, yeah, let's make one point on there.
That's that false choice there.
They partnered with the EpiPen.
Final call.
The Clinton Foundation partnered with the EpiPen maker. They said that they shared the same values and that they made him a healthcare partner. Ethics that are the same. It's atrocious.
Guys, we're going to go. Ran out of time. Jessica, Rick, thank you very much. When we come right back, how is Donald Trump gearing up for the all-important presidential debates? Buckle up for Bill O'Reilly's no-spin interview with Trump this week. That's just a couple minutes away. In the Factor flashback segment tonight, Donald Trump in the no-spin zone. Earlier this week, Bill O'Reilly pressed the Republican presidential nominee on the upcoming presidential debates, the recent controversies around his campaign, and the newest shakeup of his staff.
So your campaign has new leadership. Both Corey Lewandowski and Paul Manafort have left. How do you see the turnover? Do you think it matters to voters, or what's going on?
Well, I wanted to keep Paul as a chairman, but, you know, it was just something I felt we should do because that was really one event, if you think of it. But I ultimately decided, he's a good guy, but I ultimately decided I want to run the campaign the way I want to run the campaign. And, you know, we just had a poll come out, the Los Angeles Times, that has us 2 points ahead. We're very close in Ohio. We're right about even in Florida. I think we're doing very well. And don't forget, she's spending a fortune of money. And when people find out that she wants 550% more Syrian refugees to come pouring into our country, I think a lot of people are going to stop thinking about her. I think it's ridiculous. Frankly, with the email scandal, I don't even know how she's able to run.
It's because people don't pay that close attention. But anyway, let's get back to your campaign staff. When you're president, if you win, you're going to have to put together a staff, all right, of people to advise you and help you run the nation. Now you've turned over 2 guys in less than 6 months. Now, would it be fair to say your judgment about those 2 men wasn't good? Would that be unfair?
Well, in the meantime, in my company, I have people for many, many years, and I've done that. I just wanted to make this change. I felt very comfortable with the people that I have. I've liked them for a long time, and I wanted to make this change for a while, and I made it. You know, we have like 3 months to go, and I wanted to make sure that it was something that I wanted. And I like these people. I've always felt comfortable, and I decided to do it.
Now, the debate is going to be everything. You know that, right? The polls now, whether the LA Times has you ahead by 10 or 2, or you're behind 85, or what, it doesn't matter. The first debate is going to be the Super Bowl of debates, all right? So you and Hillary Clinton, all right? And everybody's going to be watching. Even the pinheads who don't watch will hear about it, and they'll see it on the internet after the fact.
Right.
All right. You understand that this is make or break, right? The debate. It's make or break.
Well, I think it's going to be very important. I don't know if it's make or break, but I've done well in the debates. I had 17 people in the debates, and, you know, I'm the one that survived, and I've enjoyed the debating process. I never debated before professionally or as a politician because I was never a politician before. But we had 11 debates that I participated in, and according to everybody, I did very well.
All right. Now, are you going to call her Crooked Hillary during the debate? I mean, are you going to do that, or are you going to keep it at a issue-based?
Well, I'm not going to say what I'm going to be doing, but I'll be doing what I'll be doing, and she's going to do what she's going to do, and we'll see what happens. Look,
but you must be preparing, right? I'm sure you got people in your organization that are preparing. You're preparing now. You're going to have stacks of research, and there's got to be ways in which to go. I'm just trying to get the tone and what and of course that could change in 30 days. But the tone right now is, are you going to be the guy you were in the Republican? You know, boom, take no prisoners, or are you going to be a little bit more measured?
Well, I don't want to really say that. I'm not sure exactly which way I'm going to go, but I may be the way I was, and I may be a much different person. I can't tell you.
All right.
I don't think I'd tell you. You know what? If I knew, I don't think I'd tell you, frankly. But it'll be an interesting period of an hour and a half, I guess,
I can't wait.
For, and
I can't
Probably
wait.
a pretty big audience, almost as big as the O'Reilly factor.
Well,
right?
you should
Not
have me
quite, but
moderate
almost.
the debate. I mean, and then, I mean,
okay
it
with
just,
me.
it's gloves off.
I'll
boy.
bet you'd be fair, too. All
I
want
would.
is a fair moderator.
I'd be absolutely
That's all
fair
I
to
want.
both of you, as I have been in this campaign so far. My job is to let the folks see you and Secretary Clinton as best I can put you in focus, not to push any agenda and not to do anything. And you know that. You get mad at me sometimes. But that's my job. Last question for you. They have said that this has been the worst 2 weeks of your campaign, all right? And now you have the new management, and now you're doing things a little bit differently. Do you feel that the last 2 weeks, beginning pretty much with the Muslim family, were the worst part of the campaign?
I don't think so. I mean, they'd ask me a question, I give them an answer. Like, for instance, when I said that President Obama was the founder of ISIS and he's going to get the MVP award next week, and then they say, well, Mr. Trump knows he wasn't the founder of ISIS. You know, they take it and they dice it up and chop it up.
Sure.
And it's very unfair. No, I don't think so. I think I've done very well. I think, frankly, the media, and you know this because you cover it all the time, in the history of politics, there's never been a more hostile media than to Donald Trump. So they'll take a perfectly good statement that I make, dice it up, chop it up, and then cover it for 3 days solid on some of the other networks.
You may be right about that.
Not too much.
You may be right about that.
I think we did very well, and I think the last week, and I think you've seen this, I think the last week has been the best week that I've ever had from the beginning, and that starts with the primaries. And most people have said that the last week,
because you're doing the speeches now, and you're not calling anybody names. But you always keep this in mind: the media did not like Chester Arthur very much. So I don't think it's at the level of you, but Chet got hammered a little bit. All right, Mr. Trump, as always, thank you for your time. We appreciate you being accessible, and we're hoping Hillary Clinton will come on the Factor as well.
Up next on this special edition of the O'Reilly Factor, new polling on the state of the presidential race. Two top experts weigh in a moment. Thanks for staying with us on this special edition of the O'Reilly Factor Election 2016. I'm Eric Bowling in for Bill O'Reilly, and in the Factor follow-up segment tonight, the state of the presidential race. A new poll out from Quinnipiac University shows Hillary Clinton with a 7-point advantage over Donald Trump among likely voters. Clinton has 45%, Trump at 38%. Libertarian Gary Johnson comes in at 10%. Green Party nominee Jill Stein picks up 4%. And in the key state of Florida, a Mason-Dixon poll of likely voters shows Clinton with a slim 2-point lead. Clinton is at 44%, Trump is at 42%, Gary Johnson is at 6%, Jill Stein has 2%. Joining us now from D.C., Washington Examiner columnist and Republican pollster Kristen Soltis Anderson, and with us in studio, Scott Rasmussen, president of the Rasmussen Media Group. Scott, you saw the polls. They seem to be tightening over the last few days, are they not?
You know, they're tightening a little bit from Hillary's bounce, but they're still in the general range that we were seeing before the conventions. The state of the race, it's not worth getting all hung up on a precise number. Hillary Clinton is ahead. If nothing changes, she will be elected president. But she doesn't have as big a lead as a lot of people are implying. The lead isn't all that safe. An event, a gaffe by her, a significant mistake. Something could change.
No, something big coming up, Kristen. We have the debates. Bill O'Reilly pointed out with Donald Trump that the debates are like the Super Bowl, and that first one could change everything.
The debates are going to be really important and decisive because this is a pretty, it's not a volatile race in terms of the polls bouncing around, but it's a volatile race because so many voters are frustrated with both candidates. So you have these national polls where Hillary Clinton has this lead of 6-7 points. That would seem to point to a pretty big landslide if that holds. But then you do have states like Florida, which has always kind of been a bright spot in the polling for Donald Trump. If he can get states like North Carolina to come back closer into his column, if he can hold on to a state like Ohio that's also been sort of a polling bright spot for him, all he needs to do is piece together the electoral votes rather than focus on that national number. And I think the debates and what he does with his schedule over the next couple of weeks can be really critical there.
Scott, you guys are pollsters. You guys do this.
Well, I'm a recovering pollster.
Okay. And you're probably going to push back vehemently hard against what I'm about to suggest, that this undercover Trump voter is real. In other words, people, when they're polled, are embarrassed to say they're going to vote for Donald Trump, but deep down they're going to, if they're waiting 4 or 5 hours to go watch the guy speak for 30 minutes, they're more energized.
Okay. Some people are waiting 4 and 5 hours, and they're filling stadiums, but that's not a majority of Americans. What you see happening, if there's I don't think I'd call it an undercover Trump vote at all. There may be some challenges to turnout. Young voters don't like the choice. Maybe their turnout's down a little bit. That would hurt Hillary Clinton. Maybe minority turnout isn't as big as it was for Barack Obama. That hurts Hillary Clinton. But what you're talking about here is a change of a point or two. Now, Kristen mentioned that the races in places like Florida and Ohio are very close. A point or two could decide it. But it's not enough to make up the difference. Donald Trump is not leading nationally right now.
Kristen, what about independents? Let's talk about that. Trump seems to do very well with independents.
He does pretty well with independents because you have a lot of folks who maybe 10 years ago considered themselves Republican. Politically, they're right of center, but they're tired of considering themselves Republicans. They've walked away from that label. And so in some ways, they're functionally Republicans. They still vote Republican an awful lot, but they consider themselves, I'm not part of either party. There's a lot of research that says there are people that call themselves independents, but if you actually look at their vote record, they tend to break usually for one party or the other. Remember, Mitt Romney won independence in 2012, but it wasn't enough. The makeup of the country means that not only if you are a Republican do you have to win all of your party and a lot of the middle, but you got to make sure that you win by the middle by an awful lot.
Let me bring Scott. We only have a few more seconds, Scott, but I've heard it, the white female vote is going to make or break the campaign.
Hey, look, in a close election, everything makes the difference.
The Hispanic vote, the independents,
you know,
the Democrats demo Trumpo-bots, Trumpocrats.
Let's put this in real perspective. Everybody talks about how different this is. Donald Trump is such an unusual candidate. Right now, the Electoral College is breaking down exactly the same way as it did with Mitt Romney versus Barack Obama, and we're still talking about states like Florida and Ohio being decisive states. There is a tremendous political polarization, and that's what's setting the stage for this election.
I'll leave it right there. Scott, Kristen, thank you so much. Directly ahead on this O'Reilly Factor special, Bill O'Reilly sounds off on what's gone wrong for the Trump campaign this August and how he could fix it. Stay tuned. In the personal story segment tonight, what Donald Trump needs to do to win the White House. As you may know, Fox News host Judge Jeanine Pirro is an avid Trump supporter. Recently, Bill O'Reilly spoke with Judge Pirro on how she thinks Trump can score a victory in November.
So as a Trump supporter and someone who has run for office herself, what do you think has gone wrong in the Trump campaign this August?
Donald hasn't stayed on message, and you're right. I know him. I love him. He's been my friend. I support him. You've got to be disciplined. No one should be surprised. Donald Trump has never even run for mayor. So let's not be so critical of the guy. The bottom line is that he has connected with the American people. He now needs to, as we've all said, pivot to the general. He is within 1 to 2 points after some of the worst weeks that any candidate could have, Rasmussen, Zogby, and he needs to never mention another name again other than Obama and Hillary unless he wants to thank God the day after the election.
What has he done specifically that you believe has turned some Americans against him?
It's real easy. Con. You know, whether you agree with the guy or you don't, his son gave his life for this country.
So the con thing you think hurt him?
Bad. I think that the selling of his being a racist and a bigot, irrespective of whether it's true, has for some reason gotten legs, and they will use that continuously.
How does he fight against that label of being a bigot and a racist?
How he does that is by just staying on message. How I would do it?
You tell him to do what?
He gave 2 of the best speeches that he gave. One is on the inner cities, and for the first time, we have heard a presidential candidate really focus on the African-American community and the fact that they are victims of African-American crime and poverty in the inner cities.
You don't believe that African-Americans are going to respond to that, do you?
Yeah, I think
All right, so he's polling at 2% now among African Americans. How much is that going to go higher, do you believe?
I don't think it's going to go that much higher.
All right, that's what I just said.
But that doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. What matters is that midpoint. What matters is for people to start to think that Donald Trump is thinking seriously about the issues that are confronting us.
So other people, rather than African Americans, may respond to his outreach to that community.
Right.
All right. Now, why do you think Trump acts so impulsively? All right, because you criticize him, and he comes right back, rather than saying, okay, now, maybe I want to be a little bit measured because there could be an unintended consequence if I say that Mrs. Khan might not have spoken because she's a Muslim. Why do you think he's impulsive in his remarks?
Because I think he comes from a different world. You know, Bill.
What world is that? What world?
That's the world of business, where it's, you know, it's bare knuckles. It's all about money, and it's not about political correctness. There are certain things that are appropriate to talk about, and there are things that happen in the world that we don't talk about.
Not me. I talk about everything.
All right.
That's why I've been successful. But when I talk about things, I always know that there could be blowback on me. So I fact base it. I fact base it.
Right.
I'm wondering whether he is sophisticated enough in political terms to understand that you just can't lash. If you're going to lash, you better have facts.
You know, it's interesting. You use the word sophisticated enough. He is sophisticated enough. The key operative message there is in political terms. No, he's not in terms of political terms. He's used to saying what he thinks, and that's why he connected with people. And if he stays on message going forward, Bill, he can connect with those people again. The American people don't want to hear anymore that, you know, he'll say anything that he wants. He's a regular guy. He's the kind of guy who says whatever he feels like saying. They've had enough of that. They know that's who he is. Now they want him to focus on serious issues.
The final question for you is, you still believe Trump can win?
I do. I do. I think these
Put
are
odds
lazy.
on it.
I don't gamble. It's the lazy days of summer, Bill. But what I'm telling you is it will depend upon external factors. It will depend upon what she does. It will depend on the foundation. And it will depend upon Donald Trump staying on message.
In the Back of the Book segment tonight, America's escalating tensions with Iran. Iranian naval vessels are aggressively confronting U.S. Navy ships in the Persian Gulf area this week. In the most serious incident so far, a U.S. warship fired warning shots at an Iranian fast attack craft that came within 200 yards of the American vessel. Here's how the State Department described the Iranian maneuver.
We assessed the actions were unsafe. They were unprofessional. We don't know what the intentions of the Iranian ships were, but that behavior is unacceptable as our ships were in international waters. We believe that these type of actions are of concern. They unnecessarily escalate tensions.
With Iran ramping up provocative acts against the U.S., does either presidential candidate have an answer to deal with its radical regime? Joining us now from Washington to analyze, Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer from the London Center for Policy Research. Colonel Shaffer, you heard the State Department say we don't know what their intentions are. What are their intentions? What do you think?
Their intentions, they're being aggressive. I mean, come on, Eric, this is silly. Look, we know exactly what's going on, and ever since we signed this agreement with Iran, they've done everything they can to push our buttons and try to expand their influence both in the region and intimidate us. And this is where, you know, we saw the seizing of our crew. We kind of soft pedaled that. We've paid for hostages to be returned. We're constantly showing weakness. So what do you get when you show weakness? You get people pushing your buttons and pushing you harder.
But Colonel Shaffer, why are they pushing? What's the purpose to I don't know, create some sort of video to bring back home and say, look, we're pushing the United States buttons?
That's part of it, and part of it is actually part of what they're trying to do in the region. They're trying to increase their influence across the region. Eric, one of the things that's very strong in the culture is the strong horse. So if you're seen as a strong horse, that it both influences your neighbors, it shows that you're willing to take on risk and do things. And you know, I'm part. You know, my family way back when was Cherokee. It's called counting coup, where you touch the enemy and the enemy can't do anything to stop you. So I think part of what we're doing here is we're seeing the Iranians push, and actually it gives them leverage and other things as well. So it's a continuation of the process.
Colonel, do you think our generals are discussing whether or not we should do something more than just fire a warning shot, maybe sink one of these little fast-moving boats, they call them, or fast-moving vessels?
Yes. The answer is yes. Look, there's a constant review going on. I think General Dunford and Ash Carter are both looking at how we do this. The State Department's not being helpful here. They're calling this kind of, oh, this is unsafe. It's aggressiveness. And so I think we have to be much more clear on what we're doing. And the other thing, Eric, let's be clear, and you're going to ask me a question about who's better on this, probably Trump or Clinton. One of the great opportunities we missed was something called the Persian Spring back in 2009. Not only have we seen a serial failure from this administration to take advantage and actually do things to push to destabilize and weaken the Iranian regime, we've actually done things to prompt them up. Therefore, what
we're giving $150 billion. That's
right.
another thing. Colonel, I don't have a lot of time, but
Sure.
why don't we take some of those sailors? I mean, they did it to our guys. Why don't we just grab a few of them, put them up on a warship, and say, hey, cut it out, or you're not getting these guys back?
I think, well, the answer is it should come, because you've got to push back. You've got to push back hard. You cannot have ships coming close. I mean, look what happened to the Cole with Kurt Lippold. They had a small boat get next to it and blow up the ship. You cannot take that risk. And more precisely here, that money we gave them on the larger scale, Eric, we've not really defunded their nuclear program. We've allowed them to franchise to North Korea. North Korea now is taking that money and developing nuclear weapons and ballistic missiles to put the weapons on. So who's stronger? I think Ms. Clinton has, basically, if she comes in, you're going to see the shuffling of the deck chairs of the Titanic. If you like your foreign policy now, you'll get what you got. While we don't know what Donald Trump will do, we don't have a record to look at. I think, Eric, we can look realistically at who he has around him advising him. And I'm pretty sure, based on the business acumen he's had, he will play this much more like a business to win. And that's been the problem. We have a policy to lose. We have the best capability in the world. We choose to lose.
These Iranians, they keep doing this. They keep doing this. You keep poking the bear. Sometimes the bear wakes up, or the dog. Colonel Schaefer, we're going to leave it right there. Thank you very much. That's it for us tonight. Thanks for watching this special edition of The Factor. I'm Eric Bolling in for Bill O'Reilly. And please remember, the spin stops right here, because we're looking out for you.